Do you think at some point there's going to be Sharia law everywhere?
100%. This is my goal and every Muslim's goal.
And
to
do you think
establish Sharia law on earth.
Okay, but when there is Sharia law on earth, then somebody like me should be killed? Because I am a murtad.
It's up to the Amir.
But it's under Islamic law, it says that I should be killed. So you think that's okay?
In the Sharia law, that's what I follow.
But do you think that's fair? For me, like, let's say you're right, I'm wrong. Do you think it's fair to kill me because I got the conclusions wrong?
If Sharia law states that, then it should be fair for me. There's always a safe haven for you under Sharia law.
No, because you said Sharia law on everywhere on earth, so there's not going to be any safe haven for me. If Islam dominates all of earth.
That's the plan, and you
that's
either
the plan.
have
So where would be my safe haven?
In Islam.
But that would be by force then, wouldn't it?
No.
If my only safe haven is by Islam, and if I don't go back to Islam, punishment is death.
So there's two choices: Islam or death.
Do you favor or oppose making Sharia law or Islamic law the official law of the land in our country? 72% of Indonesians, 99% of Afghanis, 82% of Bangladeshis, 84% of Pakistanis, 74% of Egyptians, and on and on and on it goes, these overwhelming majorities of Muslims who favor Islamic law. My position is, and has always been, let's make a distinction between Islam as a doctrine and Muslims as fellow human beings who are incredibly diverse. I embrace Muslims, but I reject Islamic law. I reject Islamic law because it's totalitarian. I reject Islamic law because it's bigoted, and especially bigoted against women. Where Islamic law becomes the law of the land, if these attitudes are translated into law, women will need a male guardian. Child marriage is reintroduced. You'll be disinherited. If you're raped, it's your fault and you get stoned to death. And we see numerous examples of that today. I reject Islamic law because it's inherently hostile to women. It is so bigoted. And everything we talk about in this conference regarding Islamic women, we condemn all of these practices, but we will not defeat, we will not eradicate these practices unless we talk about the principle, and the principle is enshrined in Islamic law unreformed. You may have heard today that there was a Bangladeshi blogger who was hacked to death on the streets of Dhaka. This has happened frequently. In Cairo, in Tunisia, even here in the United States of America, there are more and more Muslims who are not willing to lay the blame of their internal philosophical affairs on external factors like Zionists or the American media or stuff like that. They understand that they need to compete with the Islamists who are pushing for Sharia, and they're pushing back. And I think that's what we need to embrace. And in doing so, and I think the most important way to do it is to acknowledge their fight, which is a dangerous fight.
The British Student Union now allies itself broadly with Islamist organizations such as CAGE. To quote Nick Cohen from his article from The Guardian, university managers are no better than their teenage heresy hunters. They say they want to oppose radical Islam in argument. The lawyers' secular society took them at their word. It tried to present an investigation at the University of West London into Islamist groups that were all over campuses, despite their record of advocating Jew hatred, homophobia, and misogyny. The university authorities banned the secularists. Let me be clear. I don't think anyone, even bigots emerging from Muslim communities or anywhere else, should be silenced. What I ask is that we stand up for the right to speak of all, including those, both those who stand with us and those who call for the death of our fellow disbelievers. Our society functions because we believe that hurt feelings mean essentially nothing in the eyes of our justice systems. But of course, it is claimed that this is a special case, because these aren't just personal hurt feelings, these are religious hurt feelings, and not just any religion, but the religion of the underdog, of the brown man. I want to quote Thomas Paine from his book, The Age of Reason. Whenever we read the obscene stories, the voluptuous debaucheries, the cruel and torturous executions, the unrelenting vindictiveness with which more than half the Bible is filled, it would be more consistent that we call it the word of a demon than the word of God. It is a history of wickedness that has served to corrupt and brutalize mankind, and for my part, I sincerely detest it, as I detest everything that is cruel. I wonder if Paine had been murdered for his outright contempt of Christianity, how different would the West look today? What message such a gruesome deed would have sent? How many people would it have silenced with its promise of more bloodshed to come if they had the audacity to repeat his crime? Would that fear have silenced those who insisted on the freedom of speech? How would that have affected the face of our nation? Now, I hope you will reflect on me on the fact that not only was he not murdered, neither was his contemporaries who mocked religion. Also, even then, 3 centuries ago, I don't believe he contemplated the idea that writing would actually lead to his death. And yet, in the 21st century, this is the reality of those who speak out against Islam in Muslim countries, and increasingly in Western ones.
You're the host. You got to tell them the bad news.
The bad news is cartoonists, journalists, some other people, police officer were killed in Paris.
This was really big.
It is, yes, especially in our business in particular.
Right.
Especially in your business in particular.
Right. And we have to not avoid who did this. Who did this, Jimmy?
Well, we presume, and I think
No,
it's
it's
safe.
not a presume. No. It's Muslim terrorists.
Yes, Muslim terrorists.
Right. This
most likely.
happens way too frequently. It's like Groundhog Day, except if the groundhog kept getting his head cut off. And let's also give some credit to this newspaper. This was a satirical newspaper in Paris. These guys had the balls of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, their office
Their
was
balls
bombed.
were bigger than Gerard Depardieu. Because they kept doing it.
They were firebombed. Their office was set on
Absolutely.
fire. They continued. The editor said he'd rather die than change his right to free expression.
For the crime of being satirists, for the crime of drawing cartoons. This has to stop. And unfortunately, a lot of the liberals who are my tribe, I am a proud liberal.
He's about to turn on you, so...
No, I'm not turning on them. I'm asking them to turn toward the truth, as I have been for quite a while. I'm the liberal in this debate, okay? I'm for free speech. To be a liberal, you have to stand up for liberal principles. It's not my fault that the part of the world that is most against liberal principles is the Muslim part of the world.
If anyone had gone into private eye's offices yesterday and massacred the staff because of it in the name of Christianity or Jesus, I think that not only would all of the papers today have been a lot more robust, they would have shown, at the very least, shown this image to show what the person who did the killing was so irate about. The fact is that there is something going on which we have to identify. It is an attempt in our societies to make Islam, and in particular the founder Islam, immune from any criticism. It cannot be allowed to continue.
But we have learned some things in the last 10 years, and I'll dwell on them for a moment. We've learned, in as clear a way as could possibly have been learned by anybody, that most of the press in free Western countries are cowards. We've learned that most of our artistic establishment are cowards, and that most of our politicians are cowards. We've learned that industries... We've learned that industries that spend much of their year in awards ceremonies patting themselves and each other on the back for their bravery stop when an actual act of bravery may be required.
Well, first of all, we have to remember what's going on here. This is an attempt, a very clear, very bloody attempt, to impose Islamic blasphemy law in France and across Europe. And it has to be stopped. That's why these men did it. That's why the journalists of Charlie Hebdo are dead. An attempt to impose Islamic blasphemy law in Paris. The problem is that unless you have an I am Spartacus, as you say, tactic on it, it's not worth any one individual or any one, well, let's put it this way, no one publication doing it, because, you know, after the Danish cartoons affair, Charlie Hebdo was the only paper in the world, really, that continued to say it is our right as secular French citizens to draw, lampoon, laugh at, write about whatever we want. We're free people in a free society. They were the only ones who held on to that, and obviously on Wednesday morning we know what happened as a result. So any one publication would, I think, undoubtedly put its staff at considerable risk. That's why I've suggested this week, repeated what Ayaan Hirsi Ali said after the Danish cartoons affair. We have to spread the risk around. The free press in the free world has to spread the risk around. Our freedoms hang on this. It cannot be left to a single individual or a single publication, a single satirical magazine, to hold the line for all of our freedoms.
My value is free speech, unquestionably, but I think we need to be aware of the fact that free speech comes with responsibilities.
Martin Rowson, there's got to be limits to free speech.
I agree with that, boringly enough.
No, see, I'm conflicted because part of me, as the job that we do, of course, you know, it's our job to report, and we have First Amendment that supports us, that we freedom of speech, but there's a cultural sensitivity that needs to be there.
Freedom of speech, you know what, I'm a comedian, and you can say what's on your mind and try to be as clever as you want to be. However, for every action, there's a reaction. And with Charlie, they kept pushing that envelope, pushing that envelope, pushing that envelope, and especially with Muslims. They're very, very proud about their religion.
I am a staunch defender of civil liberties, of the right to speak, but I'm not sure that I'm ready to cape for, to be in solidarity with a magazine that in many ways was troubling.
Get the fuck out!
The moment somebody says, yes, I believe in free speech, but, I stop listening. I believe in free speech, but people should behave themselves. I believe in free speech, but we shouldn't upset anybody. I believe in free speech, but let's not go too far. The point about it is the moment you limit free speech, it's not free speech. The point about it is that it's free.